Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Unemployable podcast. Today, we've got our second podcast that we've done. We've had such great success with our Friday podcast with the boys, myself, Adam, Mark, and James. And Carson got a little bit jealous, I think. So he wanted to get involved as well. And this is going to be our own property Friday podcast. But we're not actually going to be live on Fridays. I think we're putting these on Wednesdays, I think it is. So every second Wednesday, or is it once a month at the moment?
Once a month.
Yeah, once a month. So once a month, every Wednesday, we're going to be putting one of these out and seeing how much you guys enjoy them. And then we will continue putting these out. And what they are going to be revolved around is property and real estate only. And we're going to be breaking down concepts on what's happening in the property market, what's happening in the news in the property market, and what's happening in our own property development businesses. I myself do a lot of built form development. We've got Carson, who, if those of you guys that don't know, is part of Unemployable Property. He does a lot of land subdivisions. Him and Shannon got over 150 lots of land at the moment, with plenty of offers and deals that they're doing. And then we have a familiar face for some and a non-familiar face for others, Kevin Dooney. Kevin, thank you for joining us.
Good to be here.
So Kevin's going to be a regular on this podcast. Kevin's a housing futurist, right? So he builds micro apartments, and he's built over 1,000 of these within the last 3 years. And it's one of these things in Australia where affordability is becoming an issue, not just in Australia, but the Western world. And in my opinion, will continue to do so. And he's been trying to solve this problem for quite some time. He's also been involved with the sale of over 20,000 blocks of land over his career. And he's worked with the likes of Stockland, Mirvac, and Lenley. So this guy comes with plenty of wisdom. And he's, we've got plenty of jokes around that. So today, I just want to say thank you guys for joining. And I think I want to start, right? First half, what we'll do is we'll start with talk about some stuff that's happening in the news. First half, we'll start talking about what's happening in our businesses. And then second half will be what's happening in the news. So I want to get Carson, I guess. For those of you guys that don't know you, Carson, give us a 1 minute rundown and what's happening in your business. Let's dig into some topics that people aren't aware of.
Yes, like you said, we've got a few subdivision projects on the go at the moment, and we're doing our kind of first major built form project as well. So we've kind of avoided built form like the plague for a long time, just because I'm been probably scared of blowouts of construction more than anything, to be honest. And I don't have a design bone in my body, so I've and the land's just been going so well, is that it's not broken, don't try and fix it type thing. So that's kind of been our attitude. So I've just been honing in on the subdivision piece with Shan. And then when we came across this site that we settled yesterday, actually, nice little side note. One of the things, so we got the phone call from the lawyer yesterday with Upscale, and the land tax adjustment, typically it's a couple of grand or whatever it might be for that settlement. It was a $1.1 million purchase, $21,000 for land tax adjustment on top of the purchase price that we had to find, to settle that property, just because it was I don't know if it was because it was taxed to a bigger portion of the dirt, and we were like, hang on a minute, that's a bit high. And 21 grand, that's a lot of dough. So
yeah, these are the things a lot of people don't think about, right? Like they get excited to buy a block of land and you don't know all these adjustments straight away, right? Mm-hmm. It's the lawyer, when they're doing the settlement, doing the breakdown, they're giving you some figures. And if you don't have access to that 21,000, you got to know someone that does, or you got to find it quickly, because if you're not going to be settling, you're going to be losing your deposit.
Well, that's it. So make sure you try and scratch that out. If you put a line through it and just go, hey, we want to remove out that adjustment, because they might not even know what that adjustment is yet. So it's something that you want to have that question and ask to have it removed. If you can't get it removed, you can't get it removed. But yeah,
I just find it amazing that, for those of you guys that don't know, 4.5 years ago, Shannon was cleaning carpets for a job, and
I was cleaning the carpets. He was doing the digs.
Yeah, literally cleaning the carpets, right? And then Shannon, who's usually on the pod, which isn't on the pod today for a very good reason, which we'll talk about. And this is the reality of being a property developer. Sometimes you just have to have the boots on the ground. But again, like you're earning $1,000 a week 4.5 years ago, and here you are doing deals, and you got to find 21,000, which was basically almost half of your wages that you used to earn 4.5 years ago. And it's amazing to see. So for those of you guys that don't know, over that time, they've now done over, Shannon and Carson themselves, over $100 million worth of land deals, all on their own. With JV partners and private investment. And I think it's very important that we unpack some of that stuff that you're actually dealing with, because it's all good sitting down and talking about the news and supply issues and what's happening. But I want to give people like a more in behind the scenes of the things that you guys are dealing with in your business on a day-to-day business, right? What does a day look like for you? And what are some of the shit sandwiches that you guys have been eating lately? Because I think this is very important, because when people put on their property development hat and real estate hat, a lot of people put on their rose-colored glasses and think it's just, millionaires and Ferraris and, private planes and all this, but it's not the case.
Oh no, there's every single day. I go home and share with wifey. She's like, "See, look, there's a lot of problems. Is that normal?" It's like that's the job. It's just solving problems. And, that's kind of what we're doing every single day. We got 6 or 7 projects on the go at the moment, and it's just giving every single one a little nudge along. Some of them are with council, with planning, and some of them are in construction at the moment. So like the one we're just settling with, we've been trying to get the plans ready. So we've been same architect that designed your one. They're also giving us a quote for the build. So we've got a rough estimate of 150 a box. These are like 54 square meter units. So that kind of stacks up, because it's cost us roughly 35,000 per unit in dirt. We're going to spend another $1 million in civil construction to do the retaining walls, because it's quite a slopey 1 acre block. And so for the first part, the reason I like this site is because it was a 6 lot subdivision under a community title scheme.
And this is in on the Gold Coast.
Yeah, Upper Coomera. And so we thought this is the perfect one for us to have a go at doing a unit complex, because if it all goes to crap and the cost blows out, we can just go back and do that, and it makes it 30% margin and happy days. And we burn a few dollars on consultant fees, but I like the fact that we've got multiple exit strategies. So, at the moment it's tracking in the right direction. We've got some guys getting us some rough numbers out the back end in the fives, that they rent in the fives. So a gross 5% yield's probably going to work quite nicely for the average investor. And hopefully we can sell half and keep half, is kind of like the rough plan. So we're working through that at the moment. Like I said, we settled yesterday. We're hoping to lodge, in the next kind of 3 to 4 weeks. So that's that one. We've got a 30-lot subdivision in Balamble Heights in Tweed Heads that we're just going through the construction certificate design, at the detailed design of that one. A lot of slope, so there's a lot of retaining walls, and every developer down there is just delivering the blocks with the slope. And I said to our guys, I said, look, we're going to be the only estate down there that's going to be a community title scheme. So we've got body corporates. People don't like paying $30-$40 a week just for their piece of dirt. And we've got no facility, so no pool.
Most people, when they're investing in real estate, are buying today and holding for 10 years, hoping that the value of your property is going to go up. Other people are buying negatively geared properties for tax purposes. Let me tell you, what Kevin Dooney and the High Yield Property Club are teaching people is how to invest in rooming houses. They're building hundreds of rooming houses every year. What's a rooming house? It's a house with 5 separate rooms, with their own kitchenettes, with their own bathrooms, and 5 different people live in these houses. If you want to know more about this type of real estate and this type of investment structure, click on the link above the comments, or go to www.unemployable.com.au/High Yield Property Club, and Kevin and one of his team will get in contact with you guys to discuss this type of investment.
So a community title scheme, right? For those of the people that don't know what that means, what does that actually mean?
Just think of a townhouse where you got to pay the body corporates. Just remove the building. You've still got the shared driveways, so like if it's a freehold block of land, then like the roads reserve is typically like 20 square meters, and we can do them for like 10 square meters because it's, joint driveway. We don't have to have quite the council spec on road, and sometimes we can get better grades, when it comes to the slope and bits and pieces. So, and because the body corporate's job's to maintain and look after what's inside those four doors, so to speak, you can, as long as the body corporate's looking after it, council will give you a little bit more leeway because they're like, at least we don't have to look after it and have the burden of the maintenance of all of that side of things. So sometimes if you've got vegetation that needs to be protected and looked after, if you put it under a body corporate, council know that, okay, there's something in place that the grass is going to get mowed and that the weeds that aren't supposed to be there are going to get taken care of, those kind of things. Yep. So we're working through that at the moment. So we've had a builder come on board and we've said, look, if you were to buy these off us, how would you want them delivered? So they want like a 3% grade. So we're doing like massive retaining walls. So it's going to cost us like an extra like 50 grand a lot to deliver these blocks just for the retaining walls alone, not any of the other roads and bits and pieces. But for us, it's taken us from a $550,000 price point to like a $750,000 price point because they're like, okay, you're the only one that's delivering flat land in that area. We're willing to pay this premium, and everybody else is just doing the cheaper option because they just don't want to spend the civil cost. But we're just like, hey, we've already got this negative of the, like I said, the body corporate, costs for our dirt. That's going to be a harder sell. And if I keep the slope, and the problem is during the GFC, a lot of the builders went belly up down there. So you've got an estate called the Altitude that Metricon used to own, and they on-sold it. Many of those builders went belly up during. So when we first started doing the approvals, we were like, oh, this will be fine. There's enough split level builders. Then all of a sudden they disappeared, and the couple that are there, their lead times are 12 months, and their costs have gone through the roof. So I've got to solve the problem for mum and dad coming in and give them something, because you can't just sell them the dirt. You've got to think about, at the end of the day, that they want a house. So you got to think, okay, can they get a builder and deliver something that's within a slight premium to what the existing houses are selling for? Because if the gap's too big, no one's going to do it. They'll just be like, well, yes, it's going to cost me 1.4 or 1.3, but I can buy an existing house for 1 or just under 1. It doesn't make sense. Like the gap's too big.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure where that line is, Kev. I don't know if you have do you have any thoughts on what the gap between an existing house and a new house where it's, it might not work for people that to actually buy your block of land and build? Or is it not as simple as that?
Well, I think there's two things. You commented about body corporate. Historically, if something sells for, say, $10 as a freehold, then likely the body corporate project might sell for $7.50. Historically, there's about 75-25. In terms of the established housing sector, the reason there's such a gap between new is because there's such a bigger choice of housing, from 85 square metre original Queenslanders to any size you like. Whereas for the last 50 years, they've only ever built the 4-bedroom brick house. So fundamentally, there is no gap. There's just a different product. What we're selling today in developments is Lamborghinis. What the market's asking for is Corollas. So that means that roughly 8 in every 10 sales in Australia is still established real estate or more.
Well, I actually see that as one of the biggest opportunities right now for developers that I don't think most developers are doing. And I'll probably shoot myself in the foot a little bit here, but because of that 25% gap, like between the freehold and the community title, I've seen that probably close a little bit. Like we did, it was actually a really interesting exercise.
Close.
Yeah, because people just need dirt, so they actually don't really care. They got to pay a little bit. Like we had an estate directly across the road from each other in Jake as well. We had 8 lots over here, community title, and freehold on this side. So I was like, this would be an interesting exercise because
right across from each other.
Both 830 square metre blocks. These ones sold, the community title ones sold quicker at 550,000, and the freehold ones took longer at 570,000. So we got a $20,000 premium. Over here, they're paying $18.55 a week in body corporate fees. And that was essentially just the sinking fund to replace the concrete driveway in 30 years' time. That's what it was, because we made, I wrote into the body corporate bylaws that everyone had to just mow their own piece of grass outside the front of the house. And then the people that had the road verge out the front had to do that as well and maintain the little garden beds that were there in front of their own properties. That way, I didn't need a gardener. I was trying to keep those body corporate costs as low as possible. It actually spat out because the lawyer would do that for you. Just above $20 a square meter, we made I think it was a $5,000 or $10,000 donation to the sinking fund to get it under that $20 because I knew that would be a bit of a mental block. You know, if you get over that $20, we wanted to be as low as we could. So yeah, I actually think there's an opportunity there for developers right now to do community title subdivisions. Like I'm looking at one in Caboolture right now. So it's a 6-lotter, and it's probably only 5 lots if you've got to do like the full size council road. I can get 6 lots, and I know they're going to sell for the same kind of money. And I know most developers are looking at it saying, "Oh, I don't want to do community title." And the other big plus is where you have to put in a detention basin to treat the water and slow it down and all the rest. You can put those under the road. So where you'd lose 1,000 square meters or 400 square meters or whatever it is, and that takes up another block, put that under the road. You've got a little treatment system with like filters and bits and pieces you put on there. The body corporate's slightly higher because of the maintenance of that, but you've got an extra block. All of a sudden the feasibility works. So I think there'd be huge opportunities there.
There's actually 2 key points there that I probably make. Number one is you mentioned body corporate, but I'll give an example so that the listeners can get some real-time data on that. I was asked to look at a block in Petrie a few years ago, and it was a 1 into 2 lot subdivision. There's 3 layers of government in subdivisions. There's federal, state, and local council. When you introduce body corporate, that's actually a 4th layer of government, which means that the government, the 3 of them say, okay, that's on you. So as long as you do these things, we're not responsible for them. Therefore, body corporate's interesting. Case in point, the 1 into 2 lot subdivision was not approved. We managed to get a 1 into 6 using body corporate. So we created a laneway up the side and then 6 blocks with plans on them to show how the sun, the solar orientations and other things work. So there's a bit more work in that. That was one example. Another one was Sunshine Coast challenged me. We had a couple of blocks in the Sunshine Coast and they said you can't do a block of land under 600 square metres for residential. So we bought a 900 square metre block, cut it in half, and we called the fence the body corporate and said the body corporate is a fence, so as long as you lean over the fence once a year, you've satisfied the body corporate requirements. Mm-hmm. Council pulled me up and said you can't do that every time. That's just an unusual example. So we did it another 47 times. So basically body corporate can be as simple as just a fence between two blocks of land.
Yeah. It's what developers need to get better and better at are coming up with more creative options, right, and solving these types of problems.
They won't, because something Carson said sticks so true with development industry. It ain't broke, why fix it? It is the thing I've heard for 50 years.
Yeah.
And they say, it ain't broke, why fix it? Let's have the same covenant. Let's do a 4-bedroom brick. That's what they want.
Yeah, it is broken though, right? And that's the thing. So the people that are saying it's not broken, it is definitely broken. And we'll get into a bit more on how that's broken later today in this podcast. But I think moving forward, more and more body corporates will be created, right? And people sharing housing, like what you do, Kevin, people sharing costs, because the economies of scale work, and economies of scale is everything right now, because the dream of the 4-bedroom, 2-bath, white picket fence is starting to become, it is not going to be a dream, and for many people because of the affordability issues. So I'm with you on that for sure, Carson. Kevin, what have you been up to? Like, you've got some interesting stuff that you're working on, right? Like, when we call you a housing futurist, basically for many years you've been trying to solve this problem of housing affordability, and you have the answers. You've been doing it. It's not as easy as what you feel it should be. So what are you doing right now in your business? What's some of the things since we've last spoke about over the last month or so that you've been working on? What kind of deals? What kind of land are you looking at? What are some of the issues that you're dealing with in your business?
Okay, so in the last, say, couple of months, I've just finished a 17-lot subdivision for a client. Carson knows all about it. He came second on that one. We'll maybe talk about that later. We might even talk about why he came second.
You know what? I'm hearing a lot of seconds that this guy's coming. Hey, like, he's got a fair few good firsts. Let me tell you, he's got a few seconds that I know that he's probably looking back going, you know what? I probably should have, upped my my offer by that $5,000.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, no one remembers who came second,
Yeah.
It's always that first guy that gets the memory. It's really weird.
Exactly.
Like, you know the winner of the Melbourne Cup, but
You're not first, you're last, as they say.
yeah. Second is last. But yeah, there's that. So we just finished a 17 lotter.
Where was that?
That's in a place called Canungra, which is
Okay, yep.
just outside the Gold Coast region. It's an acreage estate. Interesting, it had its problems because a lot of it is in what they call a floodplain because of the Canungra Creek that could potentially come up. It actually doesn't because the creek fell in and it's much wider and it doesn't come up. But the point is, once the map says flood, the map says flood. So building location envelopes, a lot of key issues on that one. We'll talk about how we managed to handle, I suppose, the sales process because that people can learn from that. Acreage is lifestyle, residential is not. So sometimes you've got to change the way you operate and how you sell that. So that's all finished. The job was to sell it off the plan before title with 100% of the blocks unconditional, which happened this morning. So
Congratulations.
so we're moving into title. Now, because of that, another client's asked me to take on a project, and I thought about it long and hard because it's just it's more of a first home buyer stock, and generally I don't play with that. I like to play with lifestyle-y things, different stuff. But it's a 55 lotter. The client needs a bit of a hand on it. It's in a place called Eden's Landing. Next to there is Homeview. It's actually in Homeview. That'll go live probably January, which is not far away now. I'm in pre-marketing phase. How do I pitch it? How do we promote it? What name do you call it? How do you create a name that sort of isn't named after the trees that you just knocked over? Stuff like that. I've made that comment before. People always call it like Pacific Pines for stockland. Then we knocked all the pines down.
Royal Pine.
Yeah, Royal Pine. Other example. Let's figure out the tree and kill them all.
We just named our one Meadowview.
Yeah, Meadowview. Well, that's at least clear. And I did get into trouble for I know it's a quick segue, but it's probably worth it. And it got me into trouble in the media. The client said, your client's cleared this block. I said, well, it's called selective clearing. We select the block and clear it. But they didn't like that. They got me into trouble. Sometimes a moment of joy causes you a lifetime of pain. But that's what's been happening in my market. So with another 55 lots coming up in the first home buyer, but I look at it and it's still $550,000 for 300 to 400 square meter blocks. So it's getting up there at $1,300 a meter for a first home buyer before we start. So, I use the line that I used to look in awe at Eddie Maguire's show, which was Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and now first home buyer has to be a billionaire. So, that's shot that out. So basically, it's a real interesting market on the street. And I thought I'd retire from on the street stuff, but I just love it, to actually meet the people.
You're passionate about it. You could see it. Even just, feeling your energy here, talking about it with all your experience and all the deals that you've done. And you don't have to do any of this stuff, right? Because your micro apartments, you would do quite well out of that. Yet you're still doing these other deals, helping people out, just using your experience, which I think is very important. But I think with you as well is how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
No, I was born in 1953, so 72 now.
72. So like you've seen a lot of change, right? Like, I mean, Carson and I haven't been in the game for nowhere near as long as you have, right? And a lot of the people that are listening probably in the same boat. So you would have seen, housing affordability, the most change that you would have ever seen, right, in a long time. So out of those 72 years, obviously, call it the last, how long you been in real estate?
Well, 45 years with a company called LJ Hooker.
45,
in particular, LJ Hooker Land Marketing.
Yeah.
That's how I got to 20,000 sales because we were the specialist Australia-wide in fixing estates that couldn't be fixed.
So out of those 45 years, right, where have you seen the most change? Has it been recently, the last 5 years, last 10 years? Has it been prior to that? Where's the highest level of change that you've seen?
The world ended in December 1999. And the reason I say the world ended for real estate in 1999 was in 1999, call it the year 2000, a block of land was $45,000 in a place called Algesta or Callumvale. That same block is now $800,000. So when we clicked over into the year 2000, a boom happened, but it kind of never stopped. And so in my 45 years or more, 50 years, the market would have highs and lows. But since the year 2000, apart from a GFC here and there and stuff like that, pretty well bugger all happened except continued growth. And so we used to have 8-year hiatuses where there'd be no growth at all. Where you'd buy something for 100,000, it was still 102,000 9 years later. That's since the year 2000, it just continued and continued to grow and grow and grow. So something that was, $45,000 for 450 square meters to go to $800,000 for the same block or $1 million, it's now $3,000 a meter, where it used to be $100 a meter in those times.
30 times.
So it is clearly, in my opinion, it is not real estate, it is land that is the problem, land. And that's why there's such a big gap in established real estate to what Carson asked earlier in regards to new stock, because everybody is
fighting over the same piece of land.
Well, they're not even fighting over the same piece of land. There is now none. Last time I spoke, there was 13,000 titled blocks. Speaking to people like Stockland and others, they're pre-selling 9 months out. So we're talking about, we don't have land.
Yeah.
They're pre-selling, and they're still feeding it bit by bit. They're not doing a subdivision of here's 500 lots. They're doing 40 or 50. You know?
And this is where, obviously, you with the being a housing futurist and the task force that you have is where you got the idea, obviously, because you're sitting here going, well, we can't get land. So for every person that needs a home, that's 5 blocks of land. And what you're doing now is micro apartments where you build one home where you can house 5 people, as an example.
Yeah, I do. There's a rule in what you do when you're trying to create solutions, which is money lost, nothing lost, confidence lost, everything lost. I did a release of a brand new product called a Resi Rental. Resi Rental is where we created for the first time a downsizer could live in their own home and rent out 4 micro apartments under their home and get $80,000 a year in income. The ABC came out and did a show on that. I got 250 comments. None of them were very nice, from slum landlord to, fat cat and you name it. So people misread what it is you're trying to do. It doesn't bother me. I mean, don't get me wrong, guys. I've learned to handle rejection, so it's all good. But the fundamental thing is you have to be so clear on what it is you're talking about. People believe that what we're creating is slum property. It is not. It is micro apartments. But that's not my problem. That's their problem. Our tenants have to earn $50,000 a year to even apply for that space. But what the people are missing is that a person living alone, and it's now 21% of people living alone in Australia, in America heading to 40%, and the waiting list for government housing, 62% are now single. So it's a big number. The divorce rate, 1 in 2, the largest divorce rates are happening in over 60s. And those people are literally not very wealthy. And so they have to figure out how do they split up what they've got, and what's left is let's get a caravan and just see Australia and die. We call them SADs, because they're just traveling like sharks. Yeah, see you later. Bye. Oh, that van's quiet. Yeah, that's because they're coming out of there. Stuff like that. We used to call them grey nomads. Way too old for that. So yeah, all sorts of stuff happening out there. It's fascinating. 122,000 people living in cars at the moment, or various other forms of couch surfing right now in Australia. I
want to get into a bit of what's happening kind of in the market, some news and bits and pieces. Thank you guys for sharing kind of what's happening in your space. I myself, before we get into that, got a few different developments happening at the moment, finishing off a luxury house, which has been an interesting journey. I'm very, very detail oriented, probably a lot more than others. And I'm getting things like, the linear grates powder coated to match the tile because I don't want them to be silver. The IOs were for the toilet, so they can do the inspections if there's an issue with the toilet. Getting those powder coated. I'm getting the tile angle powder coated. All these little things that are details. But what happens is I'm just going to get that done. Well, guess what? You then got to order the stuff, and then someone's got to deliver it to the powder coater, and then someone. So I got my wife running around, right, picking up stuff from the powder coaters, going to the, a gate company and making sure that the colors matched exactly what it is, and confirming, blinds and curtains, going to Brisbane and having meetings so that way we can get it all confirmed before it needs to go in. All these things. So when people sit there and they're like, hey, yeah, we're just going to do a luxury build. All right. But it's, in my opinion, it's all about those finer details that when somebody walks in and they go, wow, that makes the difference, right, of somebody getting emotionally attached to that home. So this isn't our forever home. So everything that I'm thinking about is thinking for that future person, is thinking of that future woman that's going to come through here, right, through the place, and that are going to look at it and go, I need this.
Yeah, but you can't make a mistake at the price range.
You can't, right? And that's the thing, right? Like,
what's it going to sell for?
I don't even know. 7+?
$7 million plus.
Yeah.
At that price, I would want to know that it's powder coated.
Yeah, correct. And that's the thing, right? Like just, and that's the difference. There's levels to different developments. I've built lower end stuff, mid range stock, luxury stock, and it's different.
We had a developer on here the other day, and he was $7 million. That's mid for him.
Yeah, correct.
It's a $17 million house.
Yeah, correct.
On the Gold Coast right now.
Yeah, and again, that's another level, like to the point where he's, his downpipes are hidden into structural columns, and
I bet you that got you excited.
Oh man, I'm just like, look what the detail. The thing is with building, it's all pre-planning.
Yeah.
All of this needs to be pre-planned. You can't just do this stuff on the go. It needs to be engineered. It needs to be looked at. So what you want, you got to be thinking about 6 to 12 months prior. And this is why, like, having such a good team around you, and I've been blessed, I've got Tony from Clamrock Constructions, who's a good mate of mine, that's building the place. He probably wouldn't do this for many people the way that we've worked together. I'm using some of my trades, some of his trades. We're collaborating. And it's been a very, very good experience. I know it's been, probably not ideal because every builder, rather just get a signed contract and get it done. But we've been having a good time along the way. And he gets along well with his wife, and I get along well with his wife because she does all the account stuff.
Yeah.
And that relationship, and always having that level of respect for each other, right? But again, that attention to detail. I drive my wife crazy because she's like, no one is like this. I'm like, trust me, you have to be like this.
So has she said something like you're undiagnosed, but something just ain't quite right?
Oh, probably. Yeah. I'm definitely undiagnosed. That's 100%.
You've been importing a lot of stuff though. How have you been navigating that? Is that just you're going on Alibaba, or have you got a supplier?
No.
And how do you draw the line between what you're importing and you're not, like, what are you looking for?
It's all it's all through relationships, right? So I've been importing for a long time through other businesses that I've had for, over 15 years. So I understand the process really well, and I've got some really good contacts in different industries. But timing is everything. One, timing, and two, when you're importing, what people forget is, the banks don't fund you the importing, right? So you got to fund the importing yourself, because you're not getting your bank claims, right, until the QS comes out, when it's actually fitted and it's in the hole. Then you get your bank claim. So when everyone's like, I'm going to import this and I'm going to import that, and I'm like, oh yeah, so how are you going to fund that $500,000? Oh, but and these are the things that people don't think about, right? So when you're importing things, that's number one. Number two is you need to think about timeline in time frame,
and your builder too, because
the builder.
If your builder doesn't like what you bring,
correct. Most
builders say, I'm not going to back that.
Correct. Most builders, right, I shouldn't say most builders, but a lot of builders don't like the whole importing thing, because they got to guarantee it all at the same time, right? But some of the quality of the stuff, like, is unreal. What's coming in from overseas. And in my opinion, you can have a thing what I call value arbitrage, which basically means, locally it costs, $100 for this. Overseas, it costs $100 for something of not equal value, of double the amount of value, right? So when you get that in the hole and you do that over and over again, and you've got that woman that comes into the display when they're, on it, because this is what happens. on a Saturday and a Sunday, they're looking for their dream home in the luxury space, right? And they're going to go to multiple. They're not just going to come to yours. They're going to come to multiple different properties, and they're going to walk in, and then one's going to stick out a lot more than the other because you're not able to afford the cost of things locally, like the stone that we have, right? Like we're putting Calcutta viola from Italy. We've got another stone called Patagonia from Brazil. Like, this isn't just Caesar stone, smart stone, a marble look. Like, this is literally coming off the blocks in the mountains of Italy, as an example. Now, luckily, I've got a very good friend who's one of the largest importers in the country. If you don't have that and you're going to go to local suppliers, you're going to be paying 2 to 3 times the amount, which means a lot of people don't buy that, or they'll just do their powder room vanity in that, and that's it. And that's what I mean. So that value arbitrage is something that is hard to put a dollar on, because it's an emotional thing when people come in and they go, wow, I just want to go see 3 or 4 other houses and it's nothing like this. So that's been interesting. It's been a wild ride.
How many of those boxes you're going to create there, so to speak?
Oh, there's a fair few. We've like the value, like the upgrades that we've done in that house with the travertine tile and the joinery, like the walk-in wardrobe is just, I can't wait to show everyone, once it's actually.
When do you hope it'll be finished?
We'll be in by Christmas.
Wow.
Yeah, we'll be in by Christmas, which is fun. So we're right at the tail end. We got landscapers starting next week. Joinery is going to be fitted started fitting within 2 weeks.
And at a time where the shortage of listings has been its most acute on the Gold Coast I've ever seen.
Yeah. So it's it's been a wild ride. During that time, also doing a DA in Burleigh Heads for 5 luxury villas, 4 levels, rooftop pool, really nice dock, not far from the Burleigh Headland, which is a very, very unique position. So in between that, we've been working on that. I've been working on that with James, dealing with consultants. We're in the midst of hiring the interior designer now, we're now looking at which QS we're going to use, dealing with the architects, engineers, civils, hydraulics. Just got the hydraulic quote this morning. So that's all happening in the background, but there's a lot of work, like talking about, abolishing the power and how much lead time you need to give to Energex to abolish the power, and then working with the tenants to make sure that you don't kick the tenants out too soon, so that way you don't lose as much rental income. But then, there's so many pieces of the puzzle together. A lot of people just see, oh, wow, just buy this fancy render. That's beautiful. They don't see the amount of work, right, that happens in behind the scenes. And we've got a few other sites. We've got one in Palm Beach that we're going to be starting the DA on, which will be units, which will be apartments. It's 200 meters from the beach. And
what size units are you going to do there?
Those will be 2-bed and 3-beds. Those will be anywhere between, that kind of 100 to 110 square meter, 98 to 110 square meter 2-bed, and then some 3-beds as well.
And have you got an idea of value on those yet for retail?
Yeah, I mean, I reckon we're going to be achieving anywhere between kind of, that 12.5 to 15,000 kind of a square meter retail. So they're not going to be low end. They're not going to be Viola Calcutta everywhere. But let me tell you, they're going to be nice kind of mid to high range, just because they're 200 meters from the beach. That'll probably be over about 9 levels. 20.
The new average for 120 square meters, 100 square meters is still 12.5 grand a meter.
Yeah. With
that's,
views,
that's like lower end.
Yeah, correct. Right. Views of the beach, 200 meters to the sand. Obviously, they're not putting the light rail through there anymore at the moment. See what happens with that. But it's an interesting ride, right? And then we have some other sites that we're working on in the background. One I'm redoing a DA on because I did it for a duplex, but now I want to put 4 on there. So there's a lot of moving parts, right, in between business and the podcast and different things. But I love it. Like, I literally was on site this morning at 6:30. Right, the tilers are finishing off some stuff. There's Eric dropping off the powder coated, items, so that way they're making sure, they're being fitted, and just little tiny things like, why isn't that painted? The glass balustrading is being fitted as we speak, but they didn't paint the raw edge of the tile. Make sure the painter paints that before the glass, so that way we don't have to pull the glass out with these types of things. So that's kind of been my world for a little while, which has been exciting. Like literally, I'll go to bed, I'll wake up at 1 a.m. going, oh, with an idea. Oh, can't forget that. Go into the ensuite, because I don't have my phone beside me at night, right? Pull up my notes, put in the reminder, boom, go to sleep. You know what I mean? But just, you got to get it out of your head, put it somewhere, so that way you're not thinking about it.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
One thing you touched on before about me coming second on your conundrum.
Well, I didn't want to bring it up twice.
But it's probably a good lesson there, because we were in the middle of building an 11-lot acreage subdivision just up the road as well, and I love the acreage product. So when I saw Canungra, it's beautiful. Got little turtles going through the creek, and I was like, this would be a great lifestyle block. Problem is, I tried to get a little bit cute with the negotiations, and I actually didn't have the cash as well. So we had the money coming in off a project, so I was trying to buy myself too much time, and your client was able to do I was trying to do options, and he got them to the money that they wanted to, and it was a bit more of a standard contract, and I was trying to get a bit too funky with bits and pieces, and I missed out on the deal. So that was a good little lesson there, to in hindsight, probably should have just tried to go for more of a standard type contract and just work in a bit more due diligence.
You know what I reckon would have worked for you? You should have JV'd it.
Well, that's the other thing.
You've got the skill sets, you've got the style, you know what you're doing. There's a lot of people out there that would gladly chuck some cash at you based on what you've been doing.
Well, that's right. And look, they wanted to. We did actually offer that to them. We had a couple of sit downs with the owners themselves, and like they all said, look, we want to sell this to you, but we just couldn't get the terms to work. But yeah, you're right. I'll just touch on a couple other things quickly before we run on to the other ones, Eric, if you don't mind.
Yep.
We got a couple of sites in Kevin's neck of the woods. We've got a site up there in Tamborine Mountains. We knocked down an old falling down church and hall, which the neighbourhood was really excited about. It was properly clapped out though. It's like it needed to go, but we've only sold one of the 3 blocks. So we're looking at it going, we've had 2 of the blocks fall over because we've come up with a design. It was like a
Home office,
house at the back, and
I remember seeing this,
on the with a little office at the front. The problem is people are ringing council, and council are going, we think it needs to be more commercial and less of a house deal. And we're like, but I got a planner that had a legal background to put this together, because I didn't want just like free advice, so I can give it to the clients. But they're ringing up council, and they're saying no. So now we're going to the next step, where I'm actually getting a proper legal letter for this design, because I can't sit on my hands and hope that it's going to sell. I've got to be a bit more proactive, and so we're actually thinking of lodging the approval ourselves, so then someone can come back and do a minor change, which is probably a bit more of a sure thing than them actually ring up council and going, oh no, we don't actually like it. So we're putting the pressure on council, saying, look, we've got a legal letter from a lawyer that I've done my homework, that they've used before to represent them, so they respect that lawyer, that says actually this is code, so to speak. Like, you can do what we've proposed, and then see if they squirm, and if they don't, then we're going to have to go through the next process. So we're doing that. And then just quickly, the construction that we've got in Jim Bournemouth. The reason Shannon's not here at the moment, we'll probably try and throw to him and see what he's up to on site.
Thanks, Cars. G'day, Kev. Sorry I couldn't be on the pod today, guys. We're right at the finish line with this project. So we've got prime seal going down today. Asphalt's been brought forward to tomorrow and Thursday. So we're trying to bring this project to a head and get it finished. We're pushing a few things at the moment, trying to make it happen a bit faster, just because we're fully leveraged on this project now. So every week we can save in moving along this project. That's about $20,000 in interest that we save. So we're pushing really hard to get up out of the ground now and get it finished.
We've got a few guys were missing. We're putting down the primer for the asphalt today, and we've got the asphalt going in on Friday, and if we don't hustle and get that happening, then they can't come back for a couple of weeks. So just that, and the reason he's not here is because he's trying to get that.
And it's raining.
It's raining, yeah. So we need to get that down, otherwise we miss that boat, and there's like $40,000 in holding costs that we, are up for if we miss that date. So it's just, those deadlines just have to be there. So the poor buggers that have been out on site have been working from 6 to 6:30. He rang me at 6:30 on the way home last night, big days, and he's driving an hour and a bit to get there, just to try and, because we've got Christmas that's coming up, and we know at council, like, they shut up shop a couple of weeks before Christmas.
Yep.
So we've got we're trying to get construction finished in the next 2 to 3 weeks, and then we've got 3 weeks of plan sealing, ticking off all the conditions of the approval. And then we're going to have 7 to 10 days it takes at the moment for the titles office. And then in your contract, it's 14 days settlement after registration of the titles. And it's going to be really tight for Christmas. If we don't miss that deadline, it's going to be first or second week of January.
Just a bit more interest.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
But this is what I love about what we do, guys, is we're not just people that are sitting on a podcast desk talking rubbish. We're actually doing things. And Chan is a perfect example. He rang me 7:30 last night. He's like, "Hey man," he calls me boss. I don't like when he calls me boss. "Hey boss," right? And so this is what's happening. I know we've got because we got back-to-back pods today. We have a big day of pods, and he's like, this is what's happening, and I'm not going to be able to make it because it's crucial. And I'm like, thank you for the call, but don't stress. It's all good, right? Because you have to do what you have to do. And this is why I love working with you guys, because, one day we're on a podcast, studio, in the podcast studio. The next, they're on site with their work booths, getting stuff done.
Yeah.
And this is the reality of it, it's not just sitting here and talking rubbish about how to do this and how to do that. Like after this, today, I'm sure you're going to go and meet clients and do deals. And
actually, I've got a big one today, and I can't tell you where, but it's at the Gold Coast, and it's a chance to create affordable housing from about 295,000.
Yes,
as on land.
Unbelievable, right? And this is
7 years we've been working on that.
Yeah, we're in the trenches, right? This is real stuff. Let's dig into what's happening in the space of real estate in the news. And
you mean how they're trying to kill it again?
Yeah, well, there's a few different topics I want to talk about. One is this 5% scheme. Obviously, the new scheme that's come out, which helps first-time home buyers purchase a property with 5%. The government then guarantees the other 15%. The government does not own the property with you. They're just guaranteeing the other 15% because usually you got to have that 20%. No mortgage insurance, which is usually built into the back end of the loan, and you're paying that obviously interest on interest. This one was interesting because there's no income caps, right? So it doesn't matter if you're earning $100,000 a year or $2 million a year. If you're a first-time home buyer, you're good to go. So this started October 1st, right? Obviously, you're using participating lenders. So what I'm assuming, I haven't been down this road because anyone that's done it. So Combank are probably one of the preferred lenders, and it must be owner occupied. So the reason why I want to talk about this is I want you guys' opinions. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Because now, the propaganda is coming out on Facebook and articles saying that there's, these types of houses have already gone up $100,000 just based on the demand that is fueling in for these, $1 million properties. Most of them are sub $1 million. I think Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Adelaide, there's Perth, there's different market caps. But you're not buying $2 million property with this. It's somewhere $850, $900, $1 million. I want to know what your guys' thoughts are. Is it propaganda? Do you think this is actually going to increase home prices because of the demand coming in? Because to be honest with you, if I'm a first-time home buyer before October 1st, right, and I'm sitting on $100,000 as an example, and I'm like, well, I need 20% plus closing costs and the rest of it. I can't get in the property market right now for $1 million unit or a small home. To then going, holy cow, all of a sudden I can, because I've got $100,000. So I've got the $50,000 plus I've got the other, $20,000, $30,000 in closing costs and bits and pieces. And I can actually make this happen now. Is it a thing, or is it propaganda with the amount of people that are coming? And how do you think it's going to affect the market, Kevin?
Well, I'm on record for that one more than once. When the $25,000 First Home Buyers Grant came out years and years and years ago. The Real Estate Institute of Queensland complained a lot about the fact that it wasn't available for the established real estate market. Overnight, every single one of my land estates, and we had 37 land estates at that time, all went up $25,000 overnight just on the land. So fundamentally, you give someone 25 grand, somebody else will say, I think I can find a way of taking that. So, the question is, what is the interest rate that is charged now on the first home buyer compared to a normal loan? Are they really saying that it's a 20%, or are they saying, well, it's not really, so we'll just adjust it up a little? Is that happening? That's a question you might want to ask. The other one is we're sucking in home buyers that really are not home buyers. The English press was saying that based on the real value, there's no more than 69,000 Australian first home buyers really available if you looked at them as a bank should look at them. And now they're sort of bringing in a lot more of those, which is a false economy in a way. But you really have to go back to supply and demand. My last comments in a previous discussion was 13,000 title blocks in Australia, enough supply for 12 weeks. We're now finding that our major developers are forward selling 9 months out now, which means that if you buy a block of land today, you won't be available till next September. The other issue I would flag is that a first home buyer is earning a certain amount of money, and you're now asking him to rent a house, buy a block of land, settle it, then build a house in many parts, which is pay for the slab, then the frame, then the roof on, then the completion, while they're paying rent. Who are we kidding? Like we're doubling their output of cost, and the average build time now is up 53%, which means it's 53% up on costs, and 12.7 months is the average time to build a house now. So we're talking about a lack of land, waiting 9 months for that land, increasing costs, still going up at about 1% every month and a half. So it's still rising, and all of these groups are just absorbing any potential profits, be it the banks or anyone else. So basically, you mentioned earlier about maybe a house where you're paying land tax and things like that. If I go out and buy an established house through a real estate agent in, say, Clayfield for $1.8 million, sure, I'll pay $100,000 or $106,000 in stamp duties. But a first home buyer, on top of what I've just said, is paying over $280,000 now in taxes for the right to get into their first home, which means they'll spend 10 years just paying back taxes before they even pay it off. Why are they going to buy? Because they're scared. They're scared, FOMO, fear of missing out, that the market's continuing to rise. And then they're getting really scared because they go, this is what it costs to rent and I could get kicked out. But at the same time, this is what it costs for a mortgage plus running costs. And they're going, whoa. I don't think we're breeding our kids for that. They've got a lot of fear before they start.
Yeah, well, I think the first-time home buyers, depending on, there's some first-time home buyers that will be in their 30s. There's some first-time home buyers that will probably be in their 40s and 50s, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think there's any age cap to this. But I think the younger generation.
Actually, I could get it.
Yeah, right. Okay, perfect. So, I think the younger generation. Go ahead, Carson.
I was just going to say to Kevin's point before, or talking to some marketeers the other day, exactly what you said, Kevin, was where they were like, one of the new schemes came in just recently, and they were just like, they said like, oh, went back to the developer, I'll take that block. Then no, all the blocks have gone up $20,000. So they've just absorbed that straight off the table, and it's not going into the pocket of the person that it's supposed to be going into. So government needs to think a little bit smarter about how they're going to do these things, because it's just like, do you have any thoughts on a better way to kind of do what they want trying to do, like that the heart behind it's right, trying to get people into affordable housing, but it's just jacking up the price of the one thing that they're trying to get into at a decent number, and it's kind of working against them.
You're kind of asking a government to do something, but let's pretend there's no government for a second, and let's say we're talking with a whole bunch of developers, and you've got, as a development group, you've got 96% of the market, but you're taking advice from this guy that's got 4% of the market. The government collectively have got 4% of the market, but they control us on 3 levels: federal, state, and local. The people that actually make all decisions in regards to housing is state government, not local government or federal. And they're not really in a position to come up with what I call innovation. And until they get into what I call private-public partnerships, the 3 Ps of those 3 pillars, and that has worked so successfully in the past, or until they're challenged to get all levers of government working, where the federal releases money to the state, who then release it to the council. So imagine you ask every mayor in Australia, what's your problem? How can we get funds to you? And the 3 layers of government will work together. Yeah, that'd work. And then bring in some private thinkers in there to actually create the sales for that. That would be a no-brainer. But no, it's important to make statements which are more motherhood. And it really comes down to, when it's all said and done, there's more said than done.
Yeah.
Would be my answer to that.
Overall, good idea, bad idea in your opinion, 5% scheme?
Oh, look, I'm not against it necessarily, but I just, unfortunately, I don't think it's really working the way that they're going to want it to work. So,
good idea, bad idea overall, in your opinion?
Massive fail.
Massive fail. I think it's a fail for myself as well. I think it's just going to create more
pain.
More pain. Yeah, more pain for people.
More debt.
Now, supply, right? Massive supply issues. We've known this for a while. And we're always talking about lack of supply, building costs, immigration, right? Basic supply and demand, economics. But that's top layer. I want to strip it down second layer. And this is what I want more and more people to think about, right? Second and third order consequences, right? So that's top layer. Second layer is, you mentioned it earlier, divorces, right? You got to think about divorce rates are up. I think they're continuing to
flip a coin, 1 and 2.
Yeah, to go up. So it's 1 and 2. So say 50%, which means more houses are needed for when someone separates or someone divorces. They're obviously, most of them aren't living in the same house. Some of them are living in the same house because they can't afford
separate rooms,
right? And they're living in separate rooms because they can't afford it. But most people, I would say, would be moving out and then either, buying another house or getting an apartment, whatever. So that puts more strain on supply. You said it earlier again, more people are single. A lot of people aren't getting married. I have friends, a handful of friends that are my age from Canada, I'm originally from Canada, that are still single, right? No wife, no kids. They're my age, 42 years old. Which means more housing, right? So if the girl's single, the guy's single, well, guess what? They're both living in separate households rather than getting married, having kids in one household. More and more pressure being put on that as well. A second thing that is putting pressure on housing is holiday letting, right? We used to have a luxury holiday letting business for many, many years on the Gold Coast. And we are across how many actual units are being holiday let, right? And there are thousands of units that are being holiday let that, if they weren't, would be put in a permanent rent roll, which again would ease some rentals. But in my opinion, holiday letting will just keep increasing. And I'll give you an example. Hometown, right? Cambridge, Ontario in Canada, 120, 130,000 people population, not much around, right? Like there's no big attractions. There's one famous wedding place there. That's about it. But it's a growing population. We're an hour from Toronto, which is like an hour from like Brisbane. As Toronto gets more expensive, people move west. They come to Cambridge. They come to other areas. My wife's aunt and uncle, they've got a beautiful property on about an acre of land within the city. Five bedroom house. Pool in the back, double car garage. So what do? They go to council and say, hey, above the double car garage, I'd like to build a
Fonzie flat,
2-bedroom apartment, right? And with separate entrance. And so they did that over the last 12 months. They've built it and they put it on Airbnb. And they said on the Airbnb listing in the summer, it's going to be going into winter now, so this isn't going to work. But they said, with any booking, you get access to the pool, which is pretty cool. Sold out. Absolutely killed it month after month since this thing's been up, right? To the point they're going like, I wasn't even anticipating anything like this, right? Yeah. Which is quite interesting. So the reason why I'm saying that is holiday letting, right, is becoming a thing. We use it as a term Airbnb, but really it's holiday letting. And people are coming for multiple reasons. And I think that's going to increase. I know that there's some cities around the world, some councils that are being a lot stricter on whether they're allowing holiday letting or not to protect the hotels. But again, for every holiday let property, that's one that's not being thrown into the permanent rental pool.
On that, I see it on the Facebook feed blows up all the time with people teaching. Okay, lease a unit and then sublease it, and you make that kind of difference. Do you think that obviously you went through the COVID with your business and the issues there? Like, do you see that as a good strategy? I know we've got a friend at the moment that's doing really well with their Airbnb as well, but they own the unit. As a business strategy to actually say, hey, I want some my wife was like, hey, I want an extra $100,000 on the side and I want to build this thing. Do you see that as a viable strategy with what experience you've had with what you did?
Yeah. So in our business, we had managements and we had what we call rent guarantees, right? Which is your sublet clause. So basically, in a nutshell, what that means is you have a rental agreement with a sublet clause. What basically that means is you are now the tenant, you sign the lease, but there's a clause in there that lets you sublet the property so you could re-rent that out. I have a friend right now with a couple hundred units in a successful business on the Gold Coast. We've sold ours back in December, but I have another friend that's got a couple hundred, all sublet, every single one, right? So basically go to someone and go, I'll pay you $1,000. Okay, your unit on the market right now is worth $1,000 a week rent. He'll then go to them and say, you know what? I will pay you $1,100 a week rent. You're currently paying 6 or 7% management fee to Ray White or LJ Hooker to manage it. You don't need them anymore because I am now your tenant. I will manage the property for you. So that $1,000 a week is $52,000 a year. You're paying 7% on that. That's $3,500 a year. Now back in your pocket, I'm paying you an extra $100 a week in rent, right? Which is another $5,000. So you're actually $8,000 better off a year. I rent the property off of you, and then I can do whatever I want with it. I could put it on Airbnb, I could put it on Expedia, I could put it on Booking.com, whatever I want to do. I do it, I maintain it. And it's an interesting thing because people are like, yeah, but the holiday makers, bash up the units and they use things more and the rest of it. But the reality is, like, you got cleaners going in there every 3 to 4 days, cleaning, maintaining, yes, there's more wear and tear on appliances, but the rest of the unit, it's a coat of paint. It's a replacement carpet, right? Like a tile's a tile, right? So is it we were in the business. In my opinion, it is a viable business, and that's why there's more and more people doing it. But it's only a viable business if you have the resource and you have the business acumen. I wouldn't be doing it for just, I'm going to do 1 or 2 or 3. And I would definitely not be doing it if you're just subletting without the sublet clause, because a lot of people doing it illegally as well, just like the slumlords going, I'm going to rent the property and then I'm going to rent out the rooms. Or I'm going to rent out the rooms and I'm going to put sheets in between the rooms. And then one room, there's 3 people sleeping in it.
Sonny, you said the thing before as well about, the divorce and where do the people go. It's funny, like last time we did this, I was talking about our little, 50 square meter units, and one of the comments was like, ladies like, oh, I'm physically ill with these, building these, little boxes. The reality is it's in a suburb.
Yeah.
Like my mother-in-law, this is the exact kind of housing that she's desperate for. Like she'd text us on the weekends going, hey, I'm so bummed that I've just gone through these absolute dumps for $550, $600 a week. I can't find anything that I like. I'm going to get kicked out just before Christmas. There's nowhere to go, so there's this whole demographic. It's like they forget that not everybody's looking like for that 4x2 that everyone's been building. And this is in a suburb that, probably be less than 5% of the stock is 1-bedroom units. So I think people just got to realize that, there is a whole demographic of people. There's a whole market for these 1-bedroom units. And Kevin, you know it more than anyone with what you're doing. And yours is a better, more affordable product because you've also got the thing that people probably don't think about so much is the power, the water, the internet. Those little bits, they all add up on top of you. You just rock up the suitcase with your product and you're providing something that it's I probably think they're going to stay there for 3 months. And what do they stay for? 12 months on average?
Yeah. See, what people forget is the most attacked market in the world is a single person. The power bill for a single person is $317 a quarter on average, as per the Energex studies that you can do online. Fact check the hell out of that if you want. And a 5 people in the same household only chew up $530 in power. So 317, because the fridge is the fridge for one as it is for 5. The air conditioners for one is the same for 5. So what we do is we put 13.5 kilowatts to 20 kilowatts of power on the ceiling, some battery storage. It's fully furnished, so they don't have any power bills. That's a big saving. Then there's no water bills. Then there's no internet bills, because we're sharing that across 5 people in 5 separate micro apartments. We're putting 27 grand's worth of furniture across 5 rooms 5 times. There's over 110 grand's worth of furniture in there. Just hiring a television, hiring a bed, hiring stuff is really expensive. So there's that, but they don't have to sign any utility bills. They just move straight in, It's a whole different ball game.
So obviously divorces, holiday letting, and the third one I had marked down is overseas lockups. So there's a lot of foreign investment, foreign buyers that are coming to Australia, all over the world, right? And buying properties. But there's thousands and thousands of locked up units specifically. I'm sure houses are the same, that are just, money's parked. They'll buy a $2, $3, $4 million unit, $1 million unit.
Bubble wrap them,
right? And literally lock it up, right? And then it's a safe haven for money, and I understand. And everyone wants their own to own their own little piece of real estate, but that again is another thing putting pressure on supply. So guys, just don't think about the narrative of population growth and cost of housing and building prices. That's one part of it, right? And then the second layer are these different things: divorces, holiday letting, overseas lockup, and there'll be other things that I'm not even thinking about. But it's very important to think about these things.
Over 12 million vacant bedrooms in every house in Australia.
There you go, right? Like, are they increasing? Are they decreasing? So when people are like, is a property a good investment? You work out the calculations yourself, right? No one's going to sit here and go, do this or do that. You need to take the education from podcasts like this and then make your own executive decisions. What are your thoughts, Carson, on overseas ownership, foreign buyers?
It's funny because it's something that I've researched a lot in other countries. Like, what can I buy? I'm always looking at other opportunities, and we can't buy much property. There's a couple of countries you can buy, in obviously New Zealand and a couple other different places. A lot of Asia, you can't buy any of their properties. You've got to have a local that you're working with. I've looked at doing some stuff in Thailand. I've looked to do a backpackers there 20 years ago when I was running around doing some of the mission stuff that we're trying to buy, and I was looking at buying some property in other parts of Asia, and we can't do it. But then on the flip side, I'm not overly stoked about people coming in and locking it up, and as coming from a farming background as well, even more so, like our farms, like that really doesn't feel right, that like our food and our stuff that is going to foreign ownership, that grinds my gears more than the units. I know you've got affordable housing, but I really just am dead against like our farms being sold off overseas. Like, I think that's like our future. It's probably one of the things that Australia's got as well that a lot of countries don't.
Had.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, as a farmer as well, but if you've got a $30 million offer and then there's one for 45, they're going to take the 45. Like, just like when you go to sell your house, if the foreign owner is paying an extra $1 million, you're going to sell it to them. Like, it's just, I don't know. I think it's got to come from the top, and I think we're going to have a little bit more of a longer term view on things than just a quick win. And I just think they've missed the boat there.
I want to talk about a sensitive topic in this country and in the Western world, and that's homelessness. And I know that you have an article there.
That's a big one for me.
That we can discuss. Now, I mean, my wife and I go for walks all the time, down by the beach, through Broad Beach, down the boardwalk to surfers, and the amount of tents that I'm seeing, in the bush right near the beach there. You know, you got the path, you got the bush, you got the beach, and there are tents upon tents upon tents, and you know the amount of homeless even just in Surfers Paradise recently. We were walking through there with the girls. Every so often we just take the girls there and pretend to be a tourist, you know, and watch the buskers and hang out and have a Ben and Jerry's ice cream and the rest of it. And I've seen it increase, you know, year after year after year. It got to the point where I seen the Gold Coast City Council truck, big rubbish truck, driving along the path as people are walking by, and they're literally taking these tent sites, packing them up in tarps and throwing them in the rubbish, basically trying to, you know, remove them, right? And so they can move on. Obviously, you probably have a lot of people, you know, with multi-million-dollar properties on the beach that are looking down, and, you know, you got these people there that are just laying on the grass and the beach that are homeless. What's that article say, and where are we at with homelessness in this country? Obviously, I know you've done a lot of research on this topic.
Yeah,
Kevin.
25 years actually on that one. We wrote to the major councils in southeast Queensland over 2 years ago, warning them of a new thing called tent cities, and giving them a heads up on that from the data that we're reading. I mean, if you're going to be an Australian housing futurist, the trick is to sort of try and see what's happening in the future. It seems pointless having the name if you're not looking forward. So we could see a mile away tent cities coming. But what we wrote to them and said, this is an unusual circumstance because we're actually going to label them the working homeless. These people have jobs. They just don't have accommodation. And so these aren't people who have chosen the wrong choices in their life. These are people that simply can't get real estate. I mean, we're talking only a rental last week in Sydney where it goes around the block. And, you know,
The one in Bondi.
yeah, but bigger waiting list than a Taylor Swift concert, you know, that sort of stuff. It's just insane. And so we're seeing 122,000 people are deemed homeless at the moment in Australia.
What does that mean, deemed homeless?
Means we're in more shit than Flash Gordon and the early settlers, really. If you get to a point where in any society you don't create certainty, those people have got nothing to lose. They're just into self-survival mode. That's not cool. It's downright dangerous. You know, we're talking major crime increases, a whole bunch of stuff that can occur from that, because when you've got nothing to lose, that's not a good place to put society. It gets a bit, you know, all they do is say, this is the green zone, so we're going to chuck your stuff in the bin and move you over there to the red zone. And if you come in the green zone, we're going to hunt you down again and keep pushing you out. We're not fixing it. We're just moving you.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
And so, you know, you're seeing all of these good old things that we used to have, which was the Beenleigh, say, showgrounds or the Tambourine showgrounds, these places, and they are places where tents are everywhere and stuff like that because there's toilet blocks there. People are just moving into the various campsites and taking them over. Like what we're seeing is a massive shift to free camping. Massive, massive shift to free camping. Why? Well, a powered tent site in Australia is dearer than my accommodation that we create as micro apartments. It costs you more to stay in a powered tent site in Australia. It's over $400 a week for that. So, you know, that's not a solution. It's all about how do we fix that? Well, you know, 122,000 people homeless. They argue that some are couch surfing and sharing housing, but you know, not a lot are sleeping rough, but it is still sleeping rough. And that's a worldwide phenomenon at the moment. It's like...
yeah, I mean, you go to LA,
they've really cheated because what they've done is bought old $3,000 caravans and camper vans and just parked them, you know, like literally parked them.
And it's not an issue just here. Like the issue is actually smaller here when you look from seeing it, in my opinion, like Canada, when I visit in the US, like you go to Toronto, you go to these cities and there's homeless everywhere. Like you go to Sydney, you go to Brisbane, you go to Melbourne, there's a few, but not like when you go to these bigger cities in the US and in Canada. They are literally...
There's a little town in Canada called Vancouver.
Yeah.
Right? Now, Vancouver had a problem for housing in 1962-ish. And so in Vancouver, you're allowed to have a basement.
Yep.
So they got clever and became Vancouver because they're not really stupid up there. They're smart people. And what they did was they realized that if they built the house 18 inches under the ground, that was deemed to be a basement. So then legally they came up with a house called the Vancouver Special. Now, the Vancouver Special solved their affordable housing crisis for a long time. How'd they do it? They were allowed to build a house on the ground floor, calling it a basement, 18 inches under the ground, build it up, and then put another house on top. And that meant that someone could come in and buy their home, rent out the bottom place, that paid their mortgage and created housing for someone who needed it.
It's the same thing in Canada. So our hometown, I owned 2 properties back in the day there, and we call them walkout basements.
Right.
So basically separate entrance, walkout basement.
Yeah.
You don't even see them. You don't hear them.
Nope.
Because you got concrete slab up top, and then they're literally living underneath. They got a small, tiny little window that's maybe about, 250 mil.
Yep.
That's to the outside, but they're literally living underground in a basement.
It was so successful, the Vancouver government cancelled them and banned them. Then they came up 8 years later with a new thing called a fourplex, and it was so successful they banned that. The only place that got housing right was 1850 in a place called Paris, where they said it is illegal for you to build a house unless you build a garret, which is accommodation for your chambermaid or anyone you want to work with you. And so they now have more affordable housing than any other country in the world, and that could be Airbnb. They're anywhere from 11 square metres to 19 square metres. You see, in Australia, I came up with a solution in a place called Warrigal, where if you imagine somebody who's working in, say, panel beating, he's got a shop over here, he's got a mortgage, they've got rent, and then he's got his house. What I created was on an industrial site, you could put your residence on top. How we did that, using body corporate and using a thing called caretaker residence, they could live above the place they worked in. So one mortgage, one place. At night, they could shut the gates and create a go-kart track if they want. But that's illegal because the zoning doesn't allow you to have residential within certain zones. So all of this stupidity of that's pink for residential, that's blue for this, that's yellow for that, that's gone. We've got to create multi-living spaces here. Because real estate's too expensive to say that over there is this and that over there is that.
I agree.
Ain't gonna cut the mustard.
The other thing is it's with these units that we're looking to build at the moment. So I've just spent the last 3 weeks contacting all of the all the government authorities and a lot of the groups that take the government money and do social and affordable housing. And I've sent all the emails up, followed up with phone calls. And I had one get back to me. And I've literally said that, hey, I'm a developer that's got a product that I think might work for you. Let's have a chat. Let me know how you, if you want us to tweak the design, if you're interested, if you want to, buy the units, or if you want to rent them off us, or if you're not interested, that's fine as well. I can't even get a phone call back from these groups or emails. Like it's, and same down in Gunnellabar when we're looking at, they had all the issues and stuff down there. Like I'd followed them up like 3 or 4 times saying, look, I know you guys are looking for some flood-free dirt. We've got some I'll literally build you what you want to build. Like I don't know how many developers are willing to do that.
None.
And I can't even get a phone call back. Like I chased them like 3 or 4 times. They even put in a complaint. Said, guys, like, do you actually want like a solution? So we're just like, so now we've just gone back to the private market and build the cookie cutter 4x2 or whatever people want. Like I just think I don't know if it's too much red tape or they're just talking to the people that they always talk to. It's just, I just think I don't know.
It's not about the money, it's about the money. That's the line I use. So if I build a 4-bedroom home as a developer and I build a 3-bedroom home, that 3-bedroom home, that lousy 1-bedroom, the valuers will reduce that by $80,000 to $100,000 in value. If I build a 2-bedroom home, I've now lost nearly $160,000 on val. I build a 1-bedroom home, I could have lost $250,000, and I'm doing something that's undercapitalizing on that block of land. So I have to find a different way of doing that. If I build 5 apartments, I'm going to get 5 sets of infrastructure charges, 5 sets of rates. My yield goes down from 8% with what we do down to about 1.8% because all of a sudden I'm creating titles and other things. The secret to this is the 4th layer of government. You touched on it with body corporate, but you can go beyond that with things like land lease, or creating over 50s villages for first-home buyers, for instance, things like that. But they will fight you to the death before you'll be allowed to do that. So it's like, wow. Why? Because they're not getting any money out of those things. 1 set of rates, 1 set of bills.
And this is why I love talking about these things on this podcast and bringing it to the surface, because these are issues that we some people that are listening to this will have these issues, right? And not being able to afford a home and the rest of it. Some people are going to be listening to this going, yeah, but there's going to be no changes being made. But what we got to sit here, like with Kevin as a housing futurist, Carson and I with a young family, I think about my kids all the time, right? And this is why I want to bring these topics up and talk about these things, and to make people aware, because a day goes by, a week goes by, a month goes by, a year goes by, next thing you know, 10 years goes by.
Well, do you want to go on the wild side for a second?
I want to finish up the pod, but I'll give you 2 minutes.
2 minutes for the wild side. What defines a house in Australia is a laundry. So if 4 guys got together and bought a block of land and built a house with a common laundry here, they could build 4 separate sections on that land and have their own lounge, dining, kitchen, bathroom, everything, with their own decks, their own fencing, or whatever they want, as long as they got one laundry. Now that's 80 seconds tops. There you go.
That's one thing I didn't know.
There you go. One laundry is one dwelling. The second you put a granny flat in there, because it's got a laundry, it's a granny flat. No laundry, it's not a dwelling. It's an extension or some other form.
We had a demographer on here not long ago, and he said it's designed this way. And the more digging I do, the more research, the more discussions with people like yourself, Kevin, and Carson, is like, I tend to believe that it is designed this way. And there's other people, right, that are like yourself, that are trying to undo that design and go, hey, we've got options. But I think the more that we talk about it, the more that we open up about it, councils, governments are going to have no choice but to change things over time, because, the tent cities and the homelessness, these issues need to be nipped in the butt. And if we don't, it'll just become more and more and more out of control. So guys, if you've enjoyed this podcast, let us know in the comments, right? This is something we're going to be doing once a month, and then hopefully once every 2 weeks, and then, so on and so forth. But at least we're going to show up doing these once a month. So this is going to be like our little Friday chats, like we have, like I said, with Adam, James,
Wednesday.
Mark, and I, except we're going to be launching these on Wednesday. So it's going to be our property fireside chat. And if you guys like it, comment, please like, subscribe. The biggest thing that helps us is if you guys can subscribe. You press that subscribe button. There's still over 65% of you roughly that watch the pod that aren't subscribed, believe it or not. It's such a high number. And that's across all major podcasts. It's just a thing. It's a psychological thing. So one thing you guys can do, you guys comment all the time. We've get DMs, we've get emails. Love what you guys are doing. How could we support? How can we help? What can we do? Right now, press the subscribe button. That will help us more than you can think, because it'll help us get bigger and better guests. We're growing this podcast organically. We're not paying for ads. Every subscriber is a unique, real subscriber. A lot of podcasts out there, right, that are having 100,000, 500,000, a million, 2 million subscribers. Most of those podcasts are not real, as in the followers are not real. The subscribers are not real. With us, every single one of you guys is a real person that love what we are doing. So please hit that subscribe button. Kevin, Carson.
Thanks, mate.
Not bad. Second time, I think it was better.
Good time.
And we can continue to get better and better, laying brick by brick every month. Thanks, guys.
Hey there, I hope you enjoyed that episode of Unemployable. If you'd like to watch another episode, just click there.